the rebellion against the Empire?
Perhaps you referred to the imminent attack on your rebel fleet.
Where is the rebel base?
I didn't know there was anyone willing to stand up against the Empire.
Hey, and welcome to Rebels Recap. I'm Tyler, and I am joined by my lovely wife, Christine.
Hello.
Hey, so we're going to add this segment, or we're going to run this segment for hopefully all of Season 3, and we are going to recap, give a little plot summary, what worked, what didn't work for each Rebels episode. Hopefully we can keep it up. Episode 1's been a little bit of a challenge with our daughter not wanting to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's rough.
So, bear with us. We'll be here each week, one way or another. And
maybe with a screaming child.
Maybe with a screaming child. So please don't mind her. Okay, so this week opens Season 3 with our double episode, Steps into Shadow.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a good season.
I think so.
Dark. Dark. Based on where we left off. Season 2 with Mystery with Ahsoka.
Poor Ahsoka.
Well, we watched before we watched the first episodes of Season 3. We rewatched the last two of Season 2.
She was totally walking.
Yes, but was she a Force ghost? Was she something? There seemed to be a lot of symbolism there.
I want her to be alive.
Well, I think you and a lot of other people.
Give the fans what they want.
Yes, if it's a good story.
I just want what I want.
Okay, yeah, that's typical. Okay, so we end up Season 2 not really knowing what happens to Ahsoka. Vader, obviously wounded in some ways, mask torn apart. Kanan blinded. We know Maul is around somewhere. Ezra has a Sith holocron.
Yeah.
Very foreboding. And we get a lot of that kind of starting to play out in Season 3. So let's jump into the first two episodes.
Spoilers.
Yes. Thank you. I almost forgot. Okay, so as we go through each of these plot summaries, we're pretty much going to run down the entire episode. So if you have not watched the episode, pause right now. Go ahead. Click it. Okay. So if you're listening, that means you've watched the episode and you're okay with us talking about the nitty-gritty of the episode.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, or at least a quick plot summary. So we don't want to spoil anything for anybody. Please watch the episode first and then listen to us. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, are we ready now?
We're ready.
Okay. Thank you. Would hate for anyone to be spoiled.
That's the worst.
It is. I know firsthand being spoiled,
Oh,
and it was
gosh.
terrible. We'll get into that some other time. Okay. Season 3, Episode 1 and 2. Steps into Shadow. Okay, we open with what seems to be a mission. Ezra's in charge with Zeb, Sabine, and Chopper. We quickly find out that they're at a prison. They're freeing someone Sabine really isn't happy to free. And who do they find in the prison cell?
Our favorite pirate.
Favorite pirate.
Hondo Onaka.
Hondo. Okay, so Hondo and Ezra are reunited. Of course, Ezra had some intel from Hondo. Hondo wants to get out of jail and make some money on the side, or, whatever
all
he
of
wants.
the above.
Yeah, all of the above. Whatever he can get out of the situation, he's going to trade what little he has for lots of other people's stuff.
Yep.
So they escape with Hondo and his cellmate. Well, his cellmate doesn't quite make it, but right as they're escaping, we get some of those seeds planted from the end of Season 2 with Ezra and using the dark side. What does he do, Christine?
Yeah. Well, first off, he's uber powerful, which is, not crazy because he was getting more powerful at the end of season 2, but this is definitely much more. And then when they're trying to escape, there's a pilot and a walker, and Ezra just basically takes over his mind and makes him kill all the other stormtroopers and walk off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, so pretty dark. We didn't. I mean, I saw the same clip online before the episode aired, but seeing it a little bit more in context, the rest of the team was pretty surprised that he was able to do this.
Yeah, it was a shock to everybody.
I think Sabine even asks if Kanan taught him that.
Yeah.
And with a very sinister glare, Ezra says Kanan didn't teach him that.
Yeah, he's getting kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And he's killing so many people.
Yeah.
Before he was so upset about killing people, he would do his best not to. But now, all of a sudden, he's just shooting stormtroopers left and right and making people walk off cliffs.
Yeah. And I think we're starting to see some more parallels between him and Anakin as far as wanting something good, but doing evil to achieve it.
Yeah. And there are parallels there about how people are treating him and how people are trying to just force him into not using the holocron or not going to the dark side. But I will say, I like how this episode ended a lot better than how things ended up with Anakin.
Yeah, so we'll get there.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that because I had some interesting feelings about that. Okay, so the crew escapes with Hondo. Hondo gives some intel that there are some Y-Wings that the Empire is scrapping on the planet Yarma. And it's a situation where the rebels, and especially Ezra, are very gung-ho about going and getting these. Ezra was fairly successful in leading the mission to get Hondo out of jail, so he is promoted and then is put in charge of a recon mission to Yarma to get to figure out if it's actually feasible to get these Y-Wings. And so they launch into that. Before they leave, though, we get a little bit of a glimpse into where Kanan is at, especially with being blind. He seems to be fairly depressed at this point.
Yeah, he's kind of separated himself from everybody, and he's just hanging out, listening to the Force while everyone else is doing stuff and actually working for the rebellion.
Yeah, so he's not super happy. Ezra's pretty mad that he's not around.
Yeah.
I saw some parallels between Ezra's feeling with Kanan and Kylo's feeling with Han.
Oh.
So that was what came to mind, especially with some of the comments Ezra makes. Just kind of an absentee father figure. Because that's what Kanan has become. Yes, he's his Jedi master, but he's really Ezra's father figure at this point.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. And he does have the resentful son kind of expression in his voice as he's talking about Kanan.
Yeah, and Hera's kind of bummed out at the very least, if not upset, about Kanan not really being involved. So that's one of the parts that I really enjoyed about this episode, is Kanan's sort of journey throughout, and how he deals with that depression or just feeling like he's not valuable anymore.
Yeah, it was cool.
So we jump to the Imperial side, and we get some intel with Governor Price and I really shouldn't be forgetting his name. Why can't I remember?
Grand Moff.
Not Grand.
Oh, Tarkin?
Moff Tarkin. Oh my gosh. You can tell it's late. Okay.
Okay, Tarkin. He seems all like kind and agreeable and like nothing is sinister about him.
Well, he's totally a politician.
It was weirding me out though, because he's, in my experience watching him, he's always had like kind of a sinister look, even when he's talking to his Imperials.
Yeah, I mean, he's fairly straightforward, and I think he trusts Price.
That's probably true.
So Governor Price, who we've seen before trying to take control of Lothal, asks Tarkin for the 7th Fleet.
Yes.
And we don't really know what that means at this point. They go into some detail about, well, Tarkin asks, I don't remember the admiral's name, why he wouldn't be a good fit for what she's trying to do. And she pretty much just says he's a politician instead of a military guy. So we have a feeling of who's coming based on some of the previews we've seen. So we jump back to the rebels. They are heading out on their mission to get this recon. They quickly run into, they can't make a direct jump, so they run into the mining guild, who pretty much tells them to stop, report themselves, and pay a toll. And they try to run. The rebels try to run away. Ezra wants to destroy every ship, so there's no survivors, so no one can say anything to the Empire.
Yeah, he's gotten kind of crazy.
Yeah, he and definitely
aggressive.
Yeah, and Sabine kind of brings him back, saying that that's not our mission. Our mission is not to destroy anyone in our path. Our mission is to jump out of here and get the intel we need.
Yeah.
So he laments and decides, okay, fine, whatever. Let's just jump out of here. And they do. So the Empire knows that they're there, and here is where we get introduced to probably the most intriguing character, I think, of this season. Definitely thus far, but I think throughout, Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Yeah. Imperial alien. Already unusual.
Yes. So this is probably the first and likely the only time we're going to see a non-human Imperial, especially one as high-ranking as he is.
Yeah.
We have Agent Callus in this scene as well, and so it'll be interesting to see, because I think Agent Callus is going to kind of begin to move a different direction.
Yeah, I want to see more of a result of his time with Zeb. See how that kind of affects how he works as an Imperial, because this episode he kind of just was in the background.
Yeah, and I think it's just reminding us that he's there, and based on the preview, I think we'll see a different side of him.
Good.
So Thrawn is introduced to us, and it's quickly evident that he is very mission-oriented and big picture towards his end goals. So they mention him being promoted to Grand Admiral, and that the civilian, the
Grand Moff?
Grand Admiral.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, continue.
Okay. Totally lost my train of thought. He is promoted based on a campaign against a group of rebels, and Callus mentions that there were more civilian deaths than insurgent deaths, which Price and Thrawn kind of just brush off as we accomplished our mission, so the ends justify the means.
Yeah. So life is not particularly important as long as they accomplish what they're trying to do.
Yeah. So Thrawn quickly threads together these pieces of information and intel that they have to pretty much figure out what the rebels' mission is at this point, and more or less sets them up for some sort of trap, or at least the Imperials on Yarma know they're coming.
Yeah.
So the rebels get there. The team gets there in pretty quick fashion, and then is going through this kind of gaseous planet atmosphere, runs into a droid, and that kind of sets off their mission, changing it from a recon to Ezra deciding that they need to get all of the Y-Wings before they're destroyed, because the Empire knows that they're coming, so they're trying to get rid of them.
Yeah. So Ezra kind of takes over, and everyone else who's there is arguing against him, and he just says, nope, this is my mission. I'm changing the plan. Here we go.
Yeah, which...
A little power hungry.
Yeah, just he is very much... the power that he has seems to have gone to his head, which makes it a challenge, I think, to be an effective leader.
Yeah.
As we kind of quickly find out. So they land on the platform. Ezra's ordering people around. Hondo steps in to broker a deal with the workers that have pretty much been enslaved and they're more than willing to help. So they start refueling. The Imperials realize that the rebel team is there, lock down the Y-Wings, and then Ezra tries to set them free. While all of that is going on, we cut back to Kanan, who is still at the rebel base, or at least the planet. Earlier he's meditating, and hears this voice calling to him. He finally decides to kind of follow that voice and go figure out where it's coming from. So he wanders off, and he meets this force being. We assume he's actually there, not just kind of an apparition like Yoda shows up to Ezra.
Oh, yeah, he seems like he's real.
And begins to talk to Kanan about. It's pretty much just kind of like a therapy session. Is really
He's
what I
called
took away.
Bendu.
Yes, Bendu, this creature that says he's in between Jedi and Sith. That
In between the dark and the light.
Yeah, so he is awakened by the turmoil that Kanan feels, along with the Sith holocron, being something that kind of triggers this I think he said hurricane, or it's just storm of unrest. Some disturbance in the Force has woken him up, and now
Which I gotta say, he's crazy chipper for just coming out of a deep, deep sleep.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's a spunky, big monster.
I wouldn't be that way personally, but so he helps Kanan kind of address his blindness and look within to figure out what his issue really is. And that issue is kind of this fear that he has that he's not really useful, and that because he can't see, he can't do anything anymore. And so he gives the Sith holocron to Bendu and takes off to go help Ezra because he knows he's in trouble.
Yeah. As soon as he starts looking within, he kind of reconnects with Ezra, and he can feel his terror or whatever that's showing that he's in danger.
Yeah, so Hera checks in with Ezra as he's trying to unlock the Y-Wings from the docking bays, and she quickly realizes that he changed the plan and they need help. So along with Kanan and a good chunk of their rebel fleet, or what part of the fleet that they have, they take off towards their team in distress. Zeb and Sabine get away with Chopper flying Y-Wings that they quickly find out don't have hyperdrives. So it's a good thing the hangar ship showed up, or the transport ship showed up to take them.
But before it showed up, the rest, or a Star Destroyer and the Empire showed up.
Yeah, so Governor Price shows up, backing up the Imperials that are running this reclamation station, and she's being instructed by none other than Grand Admiral Thrawn. So he's not actually in the system, he's kind of advising from afar. And as the rebels show up, they try to escape. He says, let them go, because they are only a part of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Which I think cues us into Thrawn knows a lot more than maybe we do at this point.
Yeah. He knows what's going on. He chooses not to capture a decent chunk of the rebel fleet because he's looking for the rest of it.
Yeah, and he knows something else is going on. So most of Zeb, Sabine, Chopper escape to safety, and Ezra gets stuck on the station that he just disabled, so it's falling to the planet's surface.
Yeah, he was going to use the Phantom, but then the Phantom got knocked off, and he didn't think ahead very well, so now he's falling with the ship.
Yeah, so the ghost shows up with Hera and Kanan. They swoop in to rescue him. And this moment where Kanan, being blind, is reaching out of the ship to try to reach out for Ezra, who is hesitant at first but realizes, I probably don't have any other option.
Yeah.
And this is where it starts to turn for him as far as his feelings towards Kanan. Kanan has come back to rescue him in a life and death situation.
Yeah.
And he does end up saving Ezra, and they fly off to safety.
Yeah, and just before that, even though Ezra didn't expect Kanan to be anywhere nearby, when he was in danger, he just called out, "Kanan, where are you?" Because still in his heart, that's who he looks to as a protector. And then Kanan actually does show up, so it kind of helps them to reconnect.
Yeah. Okay, and that they land back at the rebel base, and Kanan and Ezra seem to be reconciled, but not before Hera kind of reprimands Ezra for changing the plans and really making an example out of him, I guess, or just really being mad that he went out of his scope of the mission.
Yeah, potentially endangering everybody else and losing the Phantom. Things went okay, but not well.
Yeah, they got some Y-wings, but a lot of not good happened as a result of his decision making. So the episode wraps up with him and Ezra and Kanan kind of reconciling. At least at this point, it'll be interesting to see if that holds, especially as they begin working together more. Okay, so that wraps up this pretty much double episode as far as an overall plot summary. What are some things, Christine, that you thought worked?
Well, this is minor, but I like Sabine's haircut.
Yes, yeah.
She's got this kind of icy purple that turns into dark purple. It's an asymmetrical pixie cut. Love it. Didn't so much like Ezra's hair.
Yeah.
It was a little hard to get used to.
Yeah. I think Sabine's was much more similar to what it had been in the past. Just more or less different color, a little bit different shaping.
Cut.
Yeah, but
A little more grown up.
Yeah. And I think that's what they're going for with both Ezra and Sabine.
Yeah.
Anything else that you felt like worked for you?
When Ezra is in the control room with whatever his name is, I don't know who that agent is, and the only way to basically get the Y-wings free is to completely disable the power of the ship. He just sticks his lightsaber through it and is just like, okay, did it. And then the guy's like, you just basically endangered your whole crew. And he says, oh, I trust them. They'll figure it out. And I like that. It makes me nervous, but I like it that he trusts his crew. He knows they'll figure it out based on their past experience. But they almost didn't. So there's that too. But it's kind of cool that he actually trusts them to get the job done.
Yeah, I think this is one of the first times through season 1 and 2, they always seem to escape regardless of the situation.
Yeah.
They escape here, but it seemed a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it took a lot more to get out of there.
Yeah, so there was at least some drama in it instead of just, the Imperials are inept.
Yeah, and some loss. I mean, they lost the Phantom, so what are they going to do now when they need to go on those types of trips?
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. I think Ezra's pull, even in that situation, but throughout the entire episode of him wanting power in order to save or protect his crew, his friends, and the struggle he has with anger within that. He talks with the holocron, the voice that's within the holocron about that, and it says that the anger is giving him power. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out moving forward, especially with some of this reconciliation he has with Kanan.
And the voice is a woman's voice, which I find interesting because from what I can think of, all the Sith that we've experienced have been men. So who is this female voice that's living within this holocron? And
it sounds similar to the voice, I think it's like the witches of Dathomir.
Oh. Okay, where Asajj Ventress is from?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wonder if there's some connection there. It sounds like, I can't remember her name from Clone Wars, the witch that was like in charge.
Mother something.
Yeah. So there may be a tie-in there. That'll be interesting to see. I thought Thrawn was cold and calculating.
Yeah, he was good.
He's going to be a great character throughout the season. I think, especially
Those red eyes.
Yeah, especially there's something with those eyes that I think you pointed out while we were watching it the first time that I paid attention to when we watched it again. But I think this is going to kind of be his role for a while, is just stepping in at advising.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see later in the season. I would assume he's going to take more of a lead role,
Probably.
especially as we roll up to Rogue One, which, as we find out at the end of the episode, the Y-Wings that they stole were not for their rebel cell, but for another. And we find out that they are actually for General Dodonna, who happens to be the general that leads the rebels off of Yavin 4 to assault the Death Star.
So basically, they're the ones who made the Death Star explosion possible.
Sort of. They had a part to play in it.
Yeah.
And the space fighting scene when the Y-Wings are flying off the platform against the TIE fighters, very reminiscent, similar shots, and kind of feel to the battle over the Death Star in A New Hope. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see this trend. We're tying things very nicely together to the original trilogy, and especially with mention of Dodonna, I'm pretty sure we're going to see some tie-ins to Rogue One somewhere in Season 3.
So exciting.
Anything else that really worked for you?
Something that worked, but, well, I guess it's not a worked or not worked, but I find really interesting, is these owl creatures with the long tails.
Yeah.
I noticed as we rewatched the season finale of last season how they transition from Vader coming out of the temple to Ahsoka like disappearing into it is this owl creature, and then one shows up and kind of leads Kanan to where Bendu is.
Yeah.
And then there's also one painted on Sabine's shoulder. So there's something going on with these owl creatures. I'm just curious to figure out what it is.
Yeah. We should maybe do a little more research on that.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to continue to show up, especially around this sort of middle ground of the Force.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Is what it seems like, because I think especially around Ahsoka, who is sort of playing this middle ground. She's saying she's not a Jedi. She's not she's obviously not a Sith. She's kind of somewhere in the middle, maybe Jedi leaning.
Light leaning, at least.
Yeah, but then Bendu says he's in the middle.
Which there's some darkness to him. He seems a little creepy in a couple ways.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, especially as he has this Sith holocron, the kind of instruction he continues to give.
Yeah.
So as far as things that didn't really work, I had to be pretty nitpicky for these episodes. We mentioned Ezra's haircut was a little bit jarring. I think for me, at the end of the episode and Ezra's change in attitude towards Kanan and their reconciliation seemed to happen really fast relative to how it seemed like those feelings had been festering in Ezra for a long time.
Yeah, it seemed like it had been building for a while. But as much as it's very quick, I like that fact because the relationship seemed to be tending toward the Anakin and basically whole Jedi Council.
Yeah.
And that relationship just kept getting more and more combative between Anakin and all the masters who were telling him not to do what he's doing, not to be who he was.
Yeah.
Or who he's becoming. And Kanan and Ezra kind of reconcile really quick. They restore that before it gets to a breaking point.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that brings them together is a life and death situation.
Yeah.
So I understand from that standpoint. I'll just be really curious to see if they're buddy-buddy,
Yeah.
kind of father-son figure type relationship very quickly again, or we start to see this kind of pulling and tugging different directions as the season goes on.
Yeah. Well, there also is, I mean, think about being a son. If your dad has been distant for a while and then all of a sudden he just shows up, sons are very happy to see their dad come back.
Yeah.
And since he has this kind of relationship with Kanan, he's likely to be more welcoming of that and more excited to see him come back than he would be if it was just a master and Padawan relationship.
Yeah.
And that just kind of makes me think of Anakin and Obi-Wan. They had more of a brother relationship, which changes the dynamic completely.
Yeah, and I think that's attributed to their age relative to training. They're much closer.
Yeah.
Whereas Kanan and Ezra aren't. It's a very, very interesting episode, and I think one that really sets the season off on a good foot, leaves us with some questions. It's just hard to wait for next week.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to just binge when it's all on Netflix.
I know. I'm getting so spoiled.
Yeah. So that's another issue for another day. Any last thoughts?
One little minor thought, which it just cracks me up every time, is how Rex continues to call droids clankers.
Yeah.
And how, like, he's still pretty competitive with droids, just like all the Clones War and the Clone Wars. They were super competitive with the droids because those were their adversaries. So Rex gets this, like, extra oomph when he's fighting a droid.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, that is probably part of his programming and training, and it's something that doesn't go away.
Yeah, which is cool.
And it's fun that he's still around and very active
Yeah.
in the group. So I'm really curious if he's going to make it all the way to the Battle of Endor.
Yeah.
When we see that picture of him, or he's on the strike team. We'll see. That is, again, something for another day. All right. This has been the first Rebel recap of the season. Join us again next week. Until then,
Bye-bye.
May the Force be with you.
Oh, that too.